Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schmidt List. I'm your host, Kurt Schmidt. Thank you for taking the time out of your week to join me. I want to jump right in and talk with our guest, Gray. I think you're going to find this really interesting about the progression of his company and the work that they are doing. I think you're just going to find it very interesting. We had a big party last night, and we had 100 people register. It was crazy. It was super fun. So check it out. I'll have links in the description below and watch for some episodes that I'll be doing about this book in particular. So let's jump in. So whether you're into project management, delivery, or any sorts of parts of being able to produce work, we're going to talk to Gray, and he's going to help us understand some of the benefits and challenges that you might need to overcome over time. So let's talk to Gray. Gray, how are you?
I'm doing well, Kurt. Thanks for the time to be here. And the book looks awesome.
Thanks. I appreciate that. So let's talk about you and the work you do. Tell me about Zen Pilot. What was the initial sort of idea and inception of this company?
Yeah, so there's kind of like two different moments leading into this. The original business was a project management software business. Loved a bunch of the tools out there, but one of the big weaknesses was the process element of project management and how do we make the process live where the work gets done. That was the big problem we were trying to solve at the very beginning. Our first software was called Do Inbound, and that wound up spinning into Zenpilot. The mission's been the same the whole time, which is how do we help grow teams that are more productive, more profitable, and healthier. So that's been the same mission. We've attacked it backwards from a lot of entrepreneurial journeys where we attacked it with software first and then rotated back to services to solve the problem.
It makes sense. You know, I see it both ways. I see people start out services and then they create a product out of the service and vice versa. So it's a very common transition. But for you, you were focused on a specific area. This wasn't just project management, like in general, like it wasn't for construction workers and people who build bridges and different things either, right?
Yeah, originally it was called Do Inbound because we're targeting marketing agencies and specifically inbound marketing agencies at the very beginning. And then that's broadened out to, we work with a ton of different agencies, and that's kind of expanded into a lot of different professional service providers.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I can imagine that a lot of those businesses, as I've experienced in the digital space, don't really start out with a strong business plan and all these things. They have an opportunity and they jump on it and they just ride it like a Bronco. And at some point, they're like, oh my gosh, this is like a real business and we have to have processes and be able to manage these things because it starts to scale, right?
Yeah, your greatest strength is your greatest weakness. And so the whole reason you got the thing off the ground is because you just went when there wasn't a great plan and you took action, and like that's how you got somewhere. And then eventually that same strength comes back to bite you where, you know, it's really hard to be productive and keep a team aligned once there's a team all together who actually needs to be on the same page. And so, yeah, that's definitely a need that evolves and grows the more that your organization grows.
Yeah. And speaking of, I want to hear more about some of the challenges you find that these people are facing these days. Is it different than it was before when you first started out? Are the problems the same and there's repeatable? How is AI playing into this? I really want to get your sense of these people who have to do delivery in these areas. Like, what are the challenges that they're experiencing and advice for them?
Yeah, there are challenges that have changed and evolved. We've been doing this for 11 years now, and it's changed, but at the core, it all goes back to the same thing. We're all frustrated by chaos in some area of life, and the antidote to that we're all after is clarity. So one of the words that we hear most commonly from folks is like, I don't have visibility into what my team is doing, or I don't have visibility into who's got capacity for this. I don't have visibility into how profitable that engagement was. Visibility is a word that comes up all the time. I'd like to just be able to log in and see everything going on across team members, who's overloaded, show me those folks in red, who's got capacity to take this on. Like that plays into everything. How do we forecast out what's going to happen? How do we do capacity modeling and planning and say, oh, here's when we can say yes to that or no to that. And whether you're in services where that becomes super important, like we're talking about actually taking on paid client work and making promises to them that we have to keep, or it's just internal, like any role. Hey, I've got to make a commitment to Kurt and say when I can get this thing done or not. And it's not just relying on me, it's relying on other people. That's kind of the pain point that everything boils down to from the top layer, the executive views of, hey, how do I see, my whole team and when we can get this thing out, or where this client project stands, or what's falling through the cracks, down to the individual contributor layer of, hey, I'm just trying to see what's on my plate today, how I'm supposed to get it done, what the priority order is, and like, just give me the clarity that I'm looking for there.
Because it does change. It can change by the hour sometimes in some of these groups. And that's what's always struck me as interesting, because I coach a lot of agency owners and people that run agencies. And it's always interesting because they start out with this, I'm really good at this service, right? So I'm a really good engineer, so I can provide freelance engineering, and that scales into an agency. Really good designer, marketer, scale all these things into an agency. And the next thing I know, I just built a people business. And I didn't really plan for this because, I've got my clients that are people and they just act like people, right? So one day they'll call you up and be like, we need to pause for like 2 weeks. Or you'll have an employee show up and say, I need to take a week off for something starting tomorrow. And these are things that you've never been trained on how to deal with or how to manage or work towards, because what you've been really good at doing and why you built the business is delivering on this value that you promise that you have, right? Like you said, like maybe demand generation, like I will get you X amount of leads. But if a client all of a sudden is like, oh, I got to pause, and an employee's like, I got to take off for a little bit, and this happens randomly throughout each week, it's just like you said, it's chaos, right?
Yeah. There's some element to that in any role, specifically in agency or client service businesses. There's some element to that that's always there. And then there's another element that's like, hey, what are we willing to tolerate? How much chaos? And so the margin that you put into your capacity planning has to reflect the amount of ability to tolerate as well. So the inputs, we can't build the system just to manage whatever inputs happen. Like there's got to be some parameters around what inputs we're willing to accept, for sure.
Yeah, and that's why I've noticed in the last 18 months, a lot of agency rates going way up. And I think that there's a part of inflation that plays into that, obviously. There is where we were paying a lot more for people than we had planned to, and people were demanding more. And also to your point, though, is that we also have to be even more flexible for our clients these days. And that flexibility has to be built into the margin, just like you said, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's still totally fine to say, you said things change by the hour. Like really, in a lot of these firms, it's like things change by the Slack message. I get this, and then here's the total shift in direction from what happened before. But that's all choice that we're willing to make or accept. Like how prescriptive are we going to be about things versus how reactive? Totally fine to be more reactive and say, yeah, whatever you need, Kurt, like you just text me and I'll go, whatever. I'll build a contest for you today, and I'll write a press release for you tomorrow, and I'll put your toolbox together for you next week. Like but we've got to bake in the fact that we're going to have lower utilization. We're not going to have as predictable work coming in, and it's just going to take more administrative overhead time where we're not actually working on the work that you want done. We're doing the management of the work. And that's fine. It's just got to be reflected then in our rates that we charge. So our average billable rate has to go up somehow, however we price and package that. And so you're seeing that reflected in the market for sure.
Yeah, I know. But I notice a lot of people are very scared of raising their rates, because what if they price themselves out of work because they've been burned before, where people are like, oh, this is too expensive, so I'm not going with you. I'm going to go with these guys. Or surprise, we actually have a budget when we said we didn't have a budget, and so what's your advice to those people that are nervous about raising their rates?
Yeah, there's this is a little bit of tricky headspace. But first of all, it's like be good at what you do, and some of this is just positioning. So if you are looking for somebody who knows ClickUp inside and out, knows agency operations inside and out, and can make that happen in your space, and you do 2 minutes of Googling, you're going to find the Zenpilot brand. And we're super tightly positioned. Like I tell any of my friends and family what we do, and they're like, I have no idea. ClickUp for agencies? What are you even talking about? Both of those words I don't really understand. I understand 4, and that's about it out of what you just said. And the flip side is that the people who need you in that very tight window, you can become the obvious expert in a short period of time. So positioning is a big part of it. And then the other part of it, I think, is just the mental side of like confidence begets confidence. Sometimes you've got to show up and act confident even when you're not. And that is part of like younger me starting out. I hate it. Like the word authentic has always been a word that stuck out to me. Like I want to be a man of integrity and I want to be authentic. And there was this big divide between like, well, authentic means I can't be confident when I don't feel confident then. And then realizing, there's the other side of being a professional, which is how do people need you to show up to lead them well? And they need you to show up with confidence, whether you feel it or not. The gift that you're giving them is the gift of belief in the move forward, and that can get twisted and go really the wrong way and go too far. We've seen a million examples of that. But then there's a really healthy side of that just has to be like, hey, we've got to step up into this. People will actually value it more and subsequently get more out. There's all kinds of studies around people buying higher priced goods, even if it's the exact same good, a blind study, and then having the better experience because they paid more for it. And so some of it is just the math of, hey, I actually need to make this. So it's not optional. I need to charge it. Some of it is, hey, I need to step up and I need to help people value it and realize the value that they need to put on the outcome that they're getting.
I couldn't agree more. It's really important. So tell me about how Zenpilot helps these people. Like what you're doing these days, and who specifically, what are you providing, and who are you working with specifically?
Yeah. About 3/4 of our clients today are these of all kinds of different shapes and sizes. We work with a little over 3,000 agencies now. They're coming in with project management, process development, operational challenges, and we're taking them through the process of digging into, hey, what's actually causing the symptoms that you're experiencing right now, what's causing the chaos, and then what does that blueprint need to look like to solve those challenges. And then there's there's two different buckets coming out of it. There's the bucket of, here's what we need to solve, here's what we are able to solve and can solve for you. Whatever you need built in ClickUp, we can do. From a change management perspective, training your team on the right principles to have them all work on the same page together and follow the same rules. That's right up our alley. Consulting you and teaching you better processes and finding a ton of efficiency and productivity. That's all in our wheelhouse. Then there's some separate bucket, which is the stuff that you need to do on your own. That's, hey, now that we have the data, this person is clearly not an A player. They're not even a B player. Like, unless there's potential, you're going to have to have some hard conversations here. Or this client project, now that we have the real data, is not profitable, and you need to decide if there's a strategic reason to keep servicing them, or if you need to go have a conversation about pricing or letting a client go. So there's both buckets there. And then about a quarter of our clients are non-agencies, largely other professional service providers, and sometimes some other enterprise or in-house accounts, like LegalZoom came to us from their marketing team initially. And same types of challenges. They largely treat themselves like an in-house agency. They don't need all the same profitability reporting and everything else that we do with a typical agency. But they need all the same stuff. They need everyone aligned around the 3 pillars of, how do we all have a standardized way that we use the tool? How do we have clear processes to make sure everyone on the team is doing things the right and best way every time? And then how do we have those habits ingrained across the team where we're all operating wavelength and have a consistent, even things like, capacity sounds like an easy thing to do, but like, how do teams measure capacity? What is your standard unit of capacity measurement? An hour, or is it a point, or is it a t-shirt size, or is it something else in an agile team or environment? And so we agree on some basic definitions and set the ground rules, and then get everyone rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, and I find it, and this is where I want to really dig in a little bit here, Gray, because I have a partner, a good friend that runs a company called Parallax, which is a resource management tool. It's an awesome tool. It's magical, but what I've found as partnering with them in certain cases and going into these agencies is that it is, and I think you kind of touched on this, it is a cultural problem. Almost half of the problem is cultural, and then the rest is sort of tools and processes. So the processes they're okay. They're not terrible, but they could be more mature. The tools are okay, but they're probably not using them exactly the way they should be using them. But for the most part, a lot of people just don't have the right mindset towards the types of goals that you just mentioned. How often does that happen when you go into those engagements? And what are some of the first things you do to help address those issues? Because that starts to move from sort of optimization to change management in a way, right?
Yeah. So almost every time there's that challenge of we're just not all aligned. And like Tom and the team at Parallax, run into the same thing, trying to push in software. Like there's a certain maturity level around how you intake work and plan for work that has to be in place if you're going to be successful using a tool like Parallax. And so the same thing happens. So the very first thing that we're doing with teams is we're putting them through an operations assessment, and from kind of the leadership team, and then the entire team is taking this benchmark survey. And we're just trying to get all the issues on the table super early. That does two things for us. One, it gives everyone's perspective. Everyone has a chance to be heard and push all the issues on the table around project management and delivery. The other thing is that if everyone has a chance to be heard, it increases the level of buy-in across the team when we're ultimately asking for behavioral changes later in the process. And then we're sorting it out. And a lot of it is initially simple definitions and agreements that we're making internally. Like what are the expectations that we're going to ourselves to and our clients. And then the back half of that is, here's the options. So this is all like strategic conversations. A lot of this, because it's the same problem sets time after time after time. There's a lot really efficient solution paths from our side. Like we could talk for 15 minutes and be like, oh, I know this is how they're going to need to have this structured, and this is the have then is going to go along with that. Here's how they're going to use time estimates in ClickUp, for example, or here's their hierarchy structure. That part can go super quickly. The diagnosis and the prescription. What takes a long time is the buy-in piece from teams. Teams still need to be educated and understand. And I think that's the piece early on, a couple of years ago. It's like, oh, I know exactly how to solve it. Like, let me just go solve it. And then you'd build it, and then it wouldn't get used. And so the piece that we've had to really grow into is the change management piece, and giving people the time to just understand, to catch up to what we know the solutions might look like, but have them actually walk through it and be fully bought into it. And now I don't just see the solution, I don't just understand the solution, but I actually believe the solution is the right solution for me. And so it's really that belief that ultimately is going to dictate, will people apply themselves and do the behavioral change that needs to happen.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, early on in my career, I've managed a very large PMO at an agency of 50 project managers, and we had 400 active projects, and it was a big machine, right? And I learned that, as we changed, because we went through an agile transformation during that time, because when I first had started there, everything was scoped and waterfalled, and then eventually we kind of moved towards, eventually started peeling away projects and moving them into agile sort of methodologies, and using Confluence and Jira and things more ready for that sort of thing. And this was pretty early on, and especially a lot of agents, I'd reached out to no other agencies were really doing that. And what I learned was, and I remember going home very frustrated and saying to my dad, like, none of these people want to change. Like, we got to change, and none of these people want to change. And he's like, people love change. People love change. And I was like, no, they don't. He's like, no, they just don't want your change. And I was like,
yeah.
Oh, I got to make it their change. And so it really helped me redo the perspective. And I think you kind of mentioned that, you kind of touched on this in your advice there, is that we have to get their buy-in because they want to be bought in, not because they have to be bought in, right?
Yeah. That is huge. It's like, in the order of operations to get this change to actually stick, specific to the work that we do, but really specific to anything, it's getting alignment on the vision. Hey, here's the vision. If it's true that we're all living by the first commandment that we teach pretty much all of our clients, if it's not in ClickUp, it didn't happen. What does that create for everybody? That creates a world where all the work is in there. You don't have to go, Slack somebody and try to figure it out. You don't, and conversely, you don't have to get interrupted 15 times a day to figure out, are you working on that thing or are you not? And then what else would come from that? And help folks say for themselves what the benefits are that come from it, and then get agreement on the vision. What are the outcomes? What are the positive outcomes that we're after? And the next piece is, well, then what needs to be true to get to that? And what needs to be true is you actually have to put all the work that you're doing in there. You have to actually project plan your work, and you've got to assign tasks to the right people. And then what's our methodology? Oh, we need due dates for everything. That means you got to put a due date on everything somehow, whether that's through a template or whether you do that. All these downstream things have to be true. And then there's, can we all agree to do that? And that's, in pretty much any scenario, it's not a fully democratic thing. It's hey, this is the way we're going to do things. Hopefully I've explained it so that you all can be bought into that idea and the outcome. But inevitably there's going to be someone who either needs to get in line or get off the ship one way or another. Like it does have to be non-optional. And then off the back end of that then is the coaching and accountability piece. And I used to just say accountability, and now it's like largely coaching. People are mostly not ignoring the habits that they need to have because they just refuse to do it. Mostly it's, this is harder for me. Like I don't know it yet. I don't know any of the hotkeys or the shortcuts or the tips and tricks to make this actually faster than what I was doing before. So a lot of it is coaching and enablement. And then some of it is actual accountability. Hey, these are the standards we agreed to. You're screwing it all up by not having everything in the platform. So you've got to solve that, and it's not optional. So all those are pieces, but you're exactly like, that's such a great quote from your dad. This has to be their change, not what you want. Yeah.
Yeah. And I get it because, I've worked with numbers of places where these people have built these crazy spreadsheets over years. They become Excel wizards, Google Sheets wizards. And then you sit them down and you're like, here's ClickUp, or here's Asana, or here's Microsoft Project, here's whatever. And they're like, no, like, to your exact point, it's sometimes it's just muscle memory. Like it doesn't have the shortcut that I'm used to. So yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. Like I still love Photoshop like crazy because I'm old school. Like I started in Photoshop before it had a number attached to it. So going to a place like Canva or these other things is like, no, I don't want to do it. So we all experience it. And so we should be able to empathize with these people as they're going through it. The one last thing I want to ask you though, is that these project managers are very beholden to they're the translators. They're the people that tie everything together. They're the traffic cops. But the people in the cars are the account managers, the developers, the designers, the marketers, all these other people. How do you work specifically with maybe somebody who's close to them, like an account manager, on when you're coming in to change these project management processes? Because the ripple effect can be pretty sizable, right? So you had mentioned like we come in and we work with project managers, but how does that ripple effect and how do you manage that going forward?
So this actually turns off a lot of teams from working with us. Like we won't work with you if your whole team won't go through our training. So we've got a ClickUp certification that every single team member on every team that we work with has to go through. And that's kind of like the nuts and bolts. Here's the really basic stuff. Here's your morning routine. Here's the way you need to set up your notifications so you're not overwhelmed right away. Here's what you need to know about the hierarchy and layout that you're going to use, like that, the kind of all the basic stuff. And that's not optional. That's everyone has to go through that. And then there's a separate set of training. So there's kind of like 5 different personas who we're after. There's the owner or executive layer. They've got their own very brief, condensed, like, hey, here's the key stuff you need to know about how you're going to get the visibility that you want. There's the project manager stuff. That's by far the longest and the most detailed. There's the account manager stuff. There's the individual contributor stuff. And then there's kind of like director level. There's some like head of delivery, head of operations type of stuff that's more granular than the executive layer or the ownership layer. And so there's specific training for each of those and specific like checkpoints that we want to get everybody to. And there's always one-on-one, like, hey, how do we personalize that in your situation on top of that? But that is one of the main reasons that teams don't wind up working with us is we know that it's not going to work or stick. You're not going to get the visibility unless you've got everybody actually bought into the principles that you've agreed to. And we can do a whole range in terms of the principles. Like here's level 5. We got these 5 main layers. We can go to level 5 and you'll have all the insights into everything that you need. You'll have templates built out for everything you ever do. Like ultimate kind of like build out. Yeah. That's not the right place to throw people into who are coming from a level 1 or level 0 setup.
Sure.
So you can make whatever trade-offs you want. Hey, I'm totally fine not having more granular capacity modeling. So we can zoom out to a level 3. We can make it an easier lift for your whole team to get into it. You'll have a little bit less out of the backside. Like all those trade-offs are totally valid to make. But whatever decision we make about that, the whole team has to agree to live by it.
Makes sense. So if I want to engage with Zenpilot, I mean, what is the first steps? How long does it take? Like what's sort of the average engagement? Give me just a high level version of that.
Yeah, super quick. So we'll go through the blueprint process together is the first thing that we do. That's our discovery and the design process. So the outcome of that, the inputs are your assessment, your team benchmark survey. Our conversations are digging into and auditing your current PM and process infrastructure. The outcome of that then is, hey, here's the design of what your ClickUp workspace, if you're moving into it or if you're already into it, what it needs to look like based on the level that we agreed on. Here's what needs to happen from a process perspective, and here's what needs to happen from a habits perspective. So that takes 2 weeks. Typical team will spend $5K to go through that kind of blitz together. From there, teams will work with us in a subscription engagement. Somewhere most teams, our packages start at $4K, get up to a custom level, but they'll work with us on a month-to-month basis. And everything that we do, you can see this on our pricing page at zenpilot.com/pricing. We use impact points for all of the pricing. So you're buying X capacity of points, and then that's getting applied based on our, the whole catalog's public to you. Here's what,
so it's scalable.
Here's what we've got. And then, based on what you want us to do, how fast we wind up going. And I even shudder internally to say, how fast do you want us to go? Because this should be really prescriptive from our side. What comes out of the blueprint is to get everything that you want to get here. Here's the point requirement. Here's the requirement that you've got. And whether that's points you spend with Zen Pilot or whether that's your internal effort to get there, here's what the lift has to look like in the path. How it needs to look like to get there. So that's how we work with clients.
I love it. I think it's great. And again, it's something that's really needed out there. I do a lot of work in this space, and like I mentioned, it can be a real challenge because there is a lot of cultural barriers that are built over time in these organizations, and to be able to change these processes and things. And like you said, sometimes change means you have to change staff. I mean, you might have to bring in different team members that are more susceptible to the change that's better for the business. You can't just have a few anchors dragging the whole ship down, because whether you like it or not, the project management group is your profit center of your business when you're an agency. And if you don't recognize that and you don't put the time and effort and capital into making it successful, well, you can sell all you want.
Right. Yeah, it just doesn't scale. The people ask all the time about what's the ROI of working at Zen Pilot specifically. And I was like, well, it's not about that's part of it for sure. What's the ROI of working with us? It's first what's the ROI of getting gold standard infrastructure built around your operations and how you do project management and stuff. And the question becomes, is Zen Pilot the best way to go there? And so obviously you need what is the roadmap? Where are we today? And what all needs to be true to get there, which is where the blueprint helps a lot of teams out. But the ROI is almost always going to show up first in productivity gains. So when I say productivity, profitability, and team health, there's some team health improvements that are kind of quick wins. Here's that thing that I haven't said for 6 months that I finally had the space to say, and we can move through and process that. But productivity almost always precedes profitability, because we're creating a lot of efficiency through this system. That only happens if everyone's bought in. But we're creating a lot of efficiency, which is increasing the amount of supply that we have to do client work or internal work or whatever it is. And then the back half of that is now we need to backfill that with profitable work. So our utilization in almost every case is actually going to decrease initially as we get a lot more efficient in handling work. And then to make that more profitable, we're running at equal profitability for a while. We just have a lot more time to put into internal work or improving processes or whatever else it is. But then we need to sell into that capacity. Now we can service more clients, more paying work with the same staff, and we've got a more efficient model moving forward. So those are I think a common question that folks have is how am I putting money in today and getting money to save back as quickly as possible? And the quickest wins come when you do let people go, when you improve efficiency enough that you're able to let people go. But that's not the path that we're after most of the time. That's not the story that's awesome to market around, aside from the fact that most of these folks have teams they love and they're trying to sell into that excess capacity and be able to create a ton of profitability.
Right. Well, and it's a cliche, but it's absolutely true. What got you here probably is not going to get you there, right? And I always talked about it you're in a fork in the road and you've already gone down this really bumpy, potholey road, and you probably are going to need to back up a little bit to go down the nicer, smoother paths to what you were saying. You've got to spend a little bit more time internally, so some of that external billing and time is going to go down a little bit as you're backing up the bus, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like most projects that we work on are easy, like, and this is typically agencies of 10 to 100 people is kind of like the most common sweet spot. There's a second set of folks who are in the like 100 to 500 person agency size, and then a few sub 10 teams. And that's rare just because the ROI that they're like the payback period in year one is just going to like, it's a longer payback period to earn back the investment. The smaller the team size is, the less scale there is to the productivity gains. But almost always there's usually like $500,000 in opportunity in front of them in a year one improvement in profitability if they're able to hit their target utilization rates and their target billable rates. And then what we see in terms of actual practice of closing that gap, like the average team is closing about 30 to 40% of that gap in year one. The teams that knock it out of the park are the teams that have the strong sales cycle and sales process, and they've got high demand where they're just able to sell into that capacity a lot quicker.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, you got to come back on, Gray. I could talk to you all day, but if I want to get in touch with you, if I want to learn more about Zenpilot, I'll have links in the description for everybody, but just give me a heads up on where I should go. What should I focus?
Yeah, the 3 places that I always point people, zenpilot.com/call. Obviously, you can explore the whole website, but you can book a call with our team and we can walk through where operations are for you now. So that's the most direct call to action. The other 2 places, though, are my LinkedIn. So I'm just Gray MacKenzie on LinkedIn. And then our YouTube channel, we put out a ton of content, over 100 tutorial videos and information on ClickUp. And so if you just search Zen Pilot on YouTube, you'll find our content there as well.
Yeah, it's great stuff. And I really enjoy the content that you folks put out. I think it's really valuable. So even if you're not quite ready to hire Zenpilot, I would definitely go and follow their content. It will definitely make you smarter at the work you're doing. So Gray, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day. It means a lot to me, and I appreciate you sharing your knowledge with my audience.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for the opportunity. This was really fun.
All right, cool. All right, everyone, that's great. You can find all the descriptions down in below. You can find all the things, and what you can find is this book. You can find this book, yes. And you can find, I don't have a hot button for it yet, but I have to go and click on it. You can find a new book, 10-10-10, How to Craft Your Life with Strategic Precision. So the idea here is, how do we craft our sort of future visions in 10 years, 10 months, and 10 weeks? And so I've got a complete framework in this book for you to help you sort of achieve the things that you want to achieve out of life. I'm really excited about it. It's getting amazing reviews already. So go and check it out. You're taking time out of your week. We'll see you.